Hunting or Bust, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan, in Chapter 14, The Natural Born Warriors. Naruto, you are way stronger than you look. Naruto looked over himself after Ruby observed him before he tilted his head. You think? Totally, Ruby continued as she jumped up to sit beside him and excitedly talked with her friend. I mean, I always thought you were pretty tough, but you totally just proved it without a doubt. I mean, I've never seen anyone beat Yang before. She was undefeated back at Signal and Patch, and you totally won. I mean, I'm still a little miffed because I lost the bet and Nora took my cookies, but it was still cool. Naruto felt his smugness and pride start to swell, and he rubbed his nose. Well, if you ever want to see me beat Yang again, just ask. Yang was sitting in front of them and was unamused at her loss and his gloating. She sternly threatened without looking back. Shut up, or I'll put another hole in your shirt with a much bloodier result. Naruto looked down to realize he still had a large burn mark through his vest and shirt that revealed his abs. He immediately remembered the terrible burning sensation he got when she punched him into the wall and sweated. Right, got it. Ruby just leaned in and whispered, doing her best not to be hurt by her big sister. Don't mind her. She's always been a sore loser. If I beat her in a fighting game or poker, she challenged me to a rematch over and over until... Ruby, shut up. Yang yelled back at her younger sister with a hint of embarrassment at the fact Ruby was failing to whisper and speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. She pointed at the red-clad girl. And like you're one to talk, you're the sorest loser I know. Ruby was shocked by her sister's declaration and jumped down beside her. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. This went on for some time. Nora turned in her seat and looked up at Naruto. But seriously, you were so cool. The way you and Yang just wailed on each other was like a TV beatdown. You were like swish, swish, shroom, and she was like punch, punch, bam. And then you were like, God, my organs. And then you were here. Naruto was confused by her thought process before he decided to just go along with it. Thanks, Nora. She beamed a smile. You're welcome. Ren looked back at him as well. All sound effects aside, that was a splendid battle. You both were excellent and showed a great set of skills. Yang looked up from where she had caught Ruby in a headlock and grinned. Well, shucks. Now I'm all embarrassed and stuff. Ruby choked up. Yang, too tight, too tight. Ren looked up at Naruto and inquired, I noticed that your techniques with your sword and wired blades were pragmatic and flowing, but when you used the short blade, you were more styled and grounded. Are you more familiar with blades like that? Naruto was so surprised by that analysis that he had to chuckle a little. He nodded. You've got a sharp eyes. Yeah, someone taught me how to use blades like that. My dad actually taught me since I was a kid how to handle short blades and knives with a steady hand. He used to be a huntsman, so those were his specialties. Oh, that is so cool, John admitted with stars in his eyes as he looked at Naruto in a whole new light. Naruto felt nervous under his friend's gaze. You think? Yeah, that's totally awesome, Naruto. Being able to use stuff like that so easily. John then seemed to look off in a daydream. Like a little kid ninja or assassin or something. Blake and Weiss just rolled their eyes at the childish prospect, although the fact that Naruto trained with his abilities prior to entering a training school would explain his experience with fighting. A few people out of a group actually had experience with fighting and weapons before they entered a hunter's curriculum. They both had personally had their own individual circumstances that led them to training with their weapons at a younger age. Apparently Naruto was the same. Weiss said to ignore that prospect as much more pressing matter came to mind. She looked over at Yang and deadpanned. So, I assume we won't be going on any trips to get our hair cut anytime soon, correct? Yang kept her chokehold on Ruby and asked, What does that mean? I mean, are you always going to go all... Weiss tried to find the best term to describe what Yang had changed into when those strands of her hair were cut. Words failed the hair, so she decided to point and bring everyone's attention to the obvious burnt hole through Naruto's shirt. When you lose a few strands of hair. Yang rolled her eyes before defending herself. Okay, look, I like my hair. I tried it short, I've tried it long, and tied up and let loose, and despite its messy appearance, I really like it as it is now, and cowlicks and all. I think it's perfect, so I get really, really mad when someone or something messes with it even in the slightest. If they mess with my hair, they pay hard. Blake looked at her partner with a raised eyebrow. Is that why you were basically brutalizing that Ursa when we met up in the forest? Pfft, Yang scoffed. It got off easy. Okay, Yang kept setting herself higher and higher on the scary meter. She was now somewhere a little higher than your average Ursa. He was sneaked over and sat in the empty seat beside his partner. He elbowed his leader's side. Hey, way to survive total annihilation, man. Looks like you pulled through by the skin of your teeth. And the saving grace of healing yourself. Naruto scoffed and patted the open hole in his clothes. Tell me about it. I'm pretty sure the janitor would be cleaning out blood in chunks of Naruto brain if I was slacking around any more than that. Kiba then wrapped an arm around Naruto's shoulder and pulled him in to whisper into his ear. Man, I'm actually really surprised you won that fight. Naruto raised an eyebrow, a little tickled off by Kiba's apparent lack of faith in him. He heavily whispered back, What does that mean? Well, I kinda thought you'd be distracted to take the fight seriously. Now Naruto was just confused. He tilted his head. Distracted? Kiba's eyes panned over and he sent a subtle shake of his head downwards at something. Naruto followed his gaze and realized what Kiba was referring to. He thought Naruto wouldn't be able to concentrate on the fight because he'd be too focused on Yang's beautiful bounty. Naruto was rather peeved that Kiba thought he could be so easily distracted by something like that, but right now he was getting a very open look at Yang's cleavage from their spot above her, and the fact that Ruby's head was being nuzzled beneath them with the younger girl's arms waving around frantically. Stupid, sexy cleavage. Naruto pushed Kiba's chuckling face away from him. Very classy, jackass. Kiba just smiled. You were the one staring. John heard the last of the conversation and joined. Staring at what? Naruto's eyes started around before he looked down at the stage and pointed. At them, of course. The others stopped what they were doing as Sasuke and Pira finally came out of the locker room with their weapons and gear fully set. A few of them jumped up to cheer for their friends. Woohoo! Go Sasuke! John did the same and cheered for his partner as best he could. You can do it, Pira! You got this! Since the group of 3 teams had already done a round of bets last time, a few of them opted to just sit down and watch their friends duel. However, Naruto and Yang egged everyone to do another round, considering they were the ones they were betting on. So with some encouragement and backing from Ruby in an attempt to get her dessert back, the bets were set. Pira, John, Ren, Nora, Weiss, and Blake. Sasuke, Naruto, Kiba, Ruby, and Yang. The only person who hadn't bet yet was Tenten, and that was because she was racking her mind in who to cheer for between her personal idol and her partner. She rubbed her head with anxiety in her eyes. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I need to support Sasuke. He's my partner. More fear started settling in her head. But I've been cheering for Pyrrha since she started fighting in the tournament. Ugh. Naruto tried to calm his teammates' worry. Tenten, we should be cheering for Sasuke. He's our teammate and friend, right? We need to support him. Tenten seemed to calm down a little and hesitantly nodded her head. Yeah, you're right. Nonsense. Weiss decided to add in before she looked towards Tenten and started countering Naruto's point. You yourself said that you have been idolizing Pyrrha's hard work and determination for years now, correct? And now you decide to abandon that admiration when she's about to fight? You should be cheering for her just as you always have. Tenten stuttered. Are you kidding? Naruto jumped out of his seat and pointed accusingly at Weiss. Stop trying to sway my team like that. She should be cheering for her partner. That's the only choice that makes sense. Oh, please. Weiss didn't even bother getting up from her seat as she crossed her legs. Pyrrha has been the idol of the students, both young and old, for years now. It only makes sense that she cheer for her. Naruto shook his head. No, Sasuke. Weiss decided to argue back. Pyrrha, Sasuke, Pyrrha, Sasuke, Pyrrha. Urgh! Tenten finally yelled as she fell out of her seat and started shaking with fear. Blake blinked and leaned in towards Weiss. I think you might have broken her. Naruto and Weiss didn't even seem to notice Tenten break down as they continued their heated argument. Why can't you cheer for Sasuke? Pyrrha's not even on your team. Yes, but she is one of the best fighters out of our group. She has proven herself time and time again as a cut above the rest. Most of the students here would have a hard time standing against her, let alone beating her. Weiss couldn't deny that Sasuke had some amazing skills due to watching him fight the Grim in their initiation and the fact he saved her from being attacked by the Alpha Wolves, but she was more certain in Pyrrha's abilities than his. She looked over at Naruto with a superior glare. Why exactly are you adamant to think he can win? Well, because he's the strongest guy on our team. Some of the others looked at Naruto with honest shock at his exclamation. Kiba was the first to voice their confusion. Did you mean that? Because I thought you would have roughly given yourself that title. Oh, I know I'm strong, but Sasuke's got more than that to show. Yang grinned. Now I want to see this fight even more. She let go of Ruby's tired form and sat up before yelling, Come on, you two, show us what you got. You can do it, Sasuke. Pyrrha, you're the best. Some of the other students started to join in and the whole room started getting filled with cheers as they waited for the fight. Pyrrha lowered her head and felt her cheeks and ears start to heat up with embarrassment. That's surprising. She blinked and looked up to see Sasuke with one arm rested on his sword and the other in his pocket. She suddenly felt a lot less conscious of the noise around her and asked, "What is?" That you could still be humbled by people cheering your name like this, he observed before looking around at the area and turned at her again. I thought you would have gotten used to it after all the competitions and events. Pyrrha shyly shrugged her shoulders. Well, those are just people that are cheering my name. These are my classmates and friends. It's a little more personal than what I'm used to. She let her humility subside for a moment before looking towards the raven-haired boy. What about you? You seem to be handling the noise from the crowd remarkably well. Have you participated in tournaments or open events like this before? Sasuke looked up and thought before smiling and shaking his head. Nope, I'm just more accustomed to blocking out noises like this than most. My brother used to train me in front of others so they'd go far and beyond to try and distract me with cheers, jeers, and a mooning once. He said it was actually useful. In real combat, your surroundings will be bustling with noise, so you have to prepare and train yourself to block it out. Pyrrha softly laughed with a mix of amusement and amazement. My, that sounds like it would be a useful training program. Sasuke shrugged. It had its moments. Alright, students, the stage is set. Glinda said as the lights dulled so only the sparring grounds around were illuminated with a proper amount of light. She looked between the hunters in training. Are you ready? Pyrrha threw her arms down and her weapon slid from her back and into her hands. Milo slid into its javelin form and into her right while Aqua jetted down to guard her left. Sasuke adjusted his right hand to hold his scabbard and lowered his legs but it did not make any move to unsheath his sword. The redhead took note of this and questioned, "You aren't going to draw your weapon?" Sasuke focused his eyes. Not yet. The combatants are ready. Glinda looked down before taking a few steps away to get off the stage. The clap of her heels made the two fighters wary when they were about to start. Begin! Bang! Sasuke fired off the shotgun and a Volman reflection, leaving a ball of fire to blaze off the ground and propelling him at amazing speeds towards Pyrrha. He pulled his legs back and twisted forward as he was about to kick Pyrrha in the space where she peaked just above her shield. But Pyrrha went with her reflexes and ducked down just as the kick missed, causing Sasuke to glide over her and slide on the ground before coming to a quick stop. He wasted no time as he dashed forward while pulling his sword out to attack her. Pyrrha turned around and parried his sword with a spray of sparks, but noticed that he spun with the movement to efficiently step towards her to attack again. Pyrrha opted for the offensive approach and raised her shield as Sasuke started to press and reflexively strike her shield. Pyrrha and Sasuke exhibited remarkable footwork as they backstepped and charged forward respectively. With each thrust of Sasuke's sword, it scrapped and clashed against Pyrrha's shield as they traveled along the stage. Pyrrha decided to counter and ducked before sweeping the ground and getting Sasuke to jump over her leg. She adjusted her position and thrusted her javelin upwards to attack his airborne form as he blocked it with his scabbard and spun through the air from the force. He landed on all fours and Pyrrha spun on the ground for the best position to face him as Milo mechanically slid into its sword form. Pyrrha stopped spinning on her back and jolted upwards to thrust her sword at Sasuke's head. He blocked and parried the blade before spinning his sword to strike the Amazon in return, but she used her shield to protect herself. Sasuke lifted himself up to his knees and thrust his sword again, and Pyrrha had to jerk her head aside as the blade came between her head and shield. Sasuke dropped his arm and Pyrrha had to quickly spin out of the way as the sword nearly landed and hit her shoulder. Pyrrha used her spin to extend her arm and prepared to slam her shield down on the swordsman's head, but Sasuke blocked it with his forearm with some extra assistance from his aura. With the push from her shield, Sasuke had to slide back a little along the floor to gain distance. Pyrrha pushed up to her knees and tossed the Aqua as hard as she could at the surprised boy as he blocked with his sword and was pushed onto his butt by the force behind the shield. She threw it with such power and accuracy that after impacting against her opponent's sword, it ricocheted straight back to her head, which she effortlessly placed along her arm. Sasuke flipped back on his feet and stood up before seeing Pyrrha swing her sword at his head. As he bent back just in time, he snapped back forward and felt his steel slide against hers as she brought her sword back to defend her. They squared off and started exchanging slashes and strikes as metal clashed and sparks spread just over their eyes. Pyrrha struck with her sword before it changed back into the javelin form so she could strike again with the longer end of it. Sasuke had to block with the lower end of his sword at the sudden strike from below that knocked his hand out of range to block Pyrrha's shield. Sasuke pulled his sheath off the clip on his side and felt the rim of Pyrrha's shield bounce off its center before he cocked a forehead and slipped it into his hand in one swift move. He aimed it at the redhead. Bang! Pyrrha quickly ducked her head beneath the blast of the shotgun and swung her spear up towards his chin. He leaned back and backflipped away from her as she jumped and lunged her weapon at his head. He ducked and spun beneath her range and aimed for her legs while she dived forward and over his blade. He cocked his shotgun again and aimed down as Pyrrha rolled into a defensive curl with her shield blocking the powerful blast of his gun. Sasuke didn't even wait for the embers to die out before he charged forward and used her shield to jump over and behind the guard to attack again. Pyrrha anticipated the move and blocked his strike as she spun up from her knees and Sasuke rolled back to his feet. Pyrrha's javelin transformed into a rifle and she placed her shield on her back before taking aim at the boy as he was getting back up. Pyrrha fired and Sasuke blocked the bullet with his blade in the nick of time. She continued firing and Sasuke deflected each bullet with a swing of his blade and sheath to protect himself. He quickly shortened the distance between them and started kicking at Pyrrha as she used her rifle to block his quick feet. She pushed his foot back and fired at him as the swordsman leaned out of the way before aiming his shotgun up at her. Pyrrha turned around and the blast bounced off her shield before she tried to catch him by surprise with a back kick, but Sasuke jumped back and blocked the kick with his shin to minimize the damage. He was good, really, really good. Time for her to pull out the ace. Pyrrha turned around and changed her rifle back into a sword before dashing in and slashing at Sasuke. Uchiha strained as he felt the power behind her strike, but didn't falter as he pushed back with equal ferocity. Sasuke jumped forward and started to overwhelm the armored warrior with strikes from his sword and sheath. Pyrrha had to step back as Sasuke kept knocking back and forth against her blade. Pyrrha narrowed her eyes and put her move into motion. She flicked her arm down and let Akuo slide onto her hand before throwing it up and over their heads. Pyrrha swung her blade up and intercepted Sasuke's sword as he prepared to follow through with his sheath, but Pyrrha focused her aura and lowered her hand out of sight before it started glowing with a faint black light. Suddenly, Sasuke's sheath shot out of his hand by some strange force, and he looked back in surprise as his secondary weapon landed on the other side of the stage. Pyrrha took his surprise to her advantage and started attacking him again. Sasuke blocked her sword several times before his precious blade leapt out of his hand by the same unknown power as before. Sasuke was left unarmed as Pyrrha raised her hand and felt her shield slide perfectly into place around her arm. She gave a mighty swing and knocked Sasuke back across the stage floor with her shield as he yelled, "Ah!" They watched Sasuke bounce on his back for a moment as Naruto stood up. "Come on, Sasuke! Get up, man!" Others started joining him to cheer for the raven-haired boy, as some just looked at the fight with their utmost attention. Some of them had fully expected this to be a one-sided battle considering the opponent was Pyrrha Nikos, a genius and prodigy of battle for their generation. They thought this would be a quick match for her opponent, would try to land a couple of hits but be immediately overwhelmed by her superior experience and strength. But Sasuke not only stood his ground so far, but had matched Pyrrha strike for strike with his excellent skills and abilities as well. Obviously, victory was finally shining down on Pyrrha once again, as Sasuke's weapon had suddenly flown out of his grip, but he had put up more of a fight than most would think able against a girl like her. Wise was suddenly very aware of why the doofus Naruto had so much faith in him. He was extraordinary for someone with no professional background like Pyrrha. But she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Why did she feel like she had heard his name before? And Blake scooted down her seat and leaned forward with a hand holding her head up to stay comfortable. She felt the tension in the air and could sense this fight wasn't quite done yet. Sasuke let out a small groan and rubbed his head after getting hit back by her shield. Even with aura, stuff like this still left him feeling a little groggy. He had no idea how Naruto had such a tolerance for this. Pyrrha took a step forward and changed Milo into its rifle form. Before she saw Sasuke look over at her, she turned to him. "Will you continue to fight without a weapon, or do you forfeit the match?" Sasuke kept rubbing the back of his head before his eyes panned and surveyed the area. Volume and reflection was gone. His blade was on one side of the stage, his sheath on the other, and he had an exceptional skill and powerful opponent with a rival about to be trained on his movement. Plus, she had some kind of special ability that let her control his weapon like telekinesis. "Okay, Time to get serious. Sasuke placed his hands on either side and pulled his feet under until he was in a crouch. He closed his eyes and lowered his head as Pyrrha looked at him strangely. She aimed her rifle on his form and prepared for any sudden movements he would make. She focused on him as Sasuke didn't make a single move, even though he could feel everyone staring at him. Sasuke slowly raised his head and started opening his eyes. He looked up at Pyrrha and she noticed that his black eyes had changed into a mixture of red irises with a black ring surrounding the pupil. He kicked his legs out behind him and they tensed along with his whole body. Pyrrha closed one eye and trained the other on Sasuke as he darted from his position with a dash. Bang! Sasuke slammed his hand on the ground and pushed off it to make him spin out of the way as the bullet ricocheted off the ground. Pyrrha kept firing round after round, but Sasuke nimbly dodged and evaded each shot while still staying close to the floor. Pyrrha started rapidly firing her gun to knock him back, but Sasuke started spinning on the ground and evading each shot without worry. He jumped off the stage with the spin and started sending kick after kick at Pyrrha's shield. She flinched as she felt Sasuke's kick hit areas of the shield that would most affect her grip and hold onto Aqua. Pyrrha kept blocking the punches before she tried hitting Sasuke with her shield as he dug under it and slid to her side. She had to block all of Sasuke's punches as his fists started to blur in a barrage of quick jabs. She kept parrying his strikes before she tried to catch him off guard with a swing, but he just barely tilted his head back and avoided her blade while keeping himself in her range. How were his movements so precise and quick now? Pyrrha was done playing defense as she crouched down to sweep his legs. Sasuke jumped up and off of Pyrrha's shield to get some distance. She stood back up and charged forward as Sasuke landed and leapt and kept limber on his feet. Pyrrha started swinging her blade as quickly as possible as Sasuke had to dodge where her blade suddenly started moving faster and closer to hitting him. He ducked, leaned, and stepped back with gritted teeth as he heard Milo cut through the air around him. Pyrrha spun around and changed it to javelin form as the rockets on the end flared and she threw it with immense power. Sasuke barely dodged it as the rocket-powered spear flew by his head and cut some of the hair at the end of his bang. She swung her shield into his shoulder and forced him to back as her javelin came flying around the stage and back into her hand. She spun and gave her weapon a full swing as she knocked Sasuke off his feet and into the air. But Uchiha didn't let that stop him as he landed and quickly dashed in towards his opponents. Pyrrha saw this happen and blocked with her shield as Sasuke's fist landed on the low end of Aquo and the sounds echoed through the amphitheater. But just as Pyrrha was about to step back to gain some distance from her foe, Sasuke's hand gripped the bottom end of the shield as his other grabbed the top. He pulled and twisted on both ends as Pyrrha had to let go so her arm wasn't hyperextended. Sasuke spun around and pulled Aquo off her arm before spinning back and slamming it into her breastplate. Everyone was silent as Pyrrha was knocked back on her butt and Sasuke placed her shield on his right arm before standing tall and ready for the next round. Did he just disarm Pyrrha Nikos? And neither of them was even below a fifth of their bar. Pyrrha lifted herself up and shook her head with a small moan before seeing Sasuke standing there with Aquo on his arm. She had a small scowl, or whatever consisted as a scowl for such a nice girl as Pyrrha, had seen her beloved shield in the hands of another. She stood back up and dusted her shorts before holding her javelin along her arm and slowly walking aside. Sasuke mirrored her movement and they kept circling around each other, examining every slight twitch or move they made. Pyrrha spun her weapon in her hand before leaping forward and giving a mighty swing that Sasuke blocked with his shield. The Pyrrha and Sasuke kept exchanging strikes and hits as sparks danced between them so much it was like a veil of embers. Pyrrha used both ends of their javelin to strike as Sasuke twisted his upper body to block each move. They kept circling around the center of the stage, exchanging blows as everyone watched in amazement at their moves. Pyrrha kept striking, but realized she wasn't going to get anywhere as long as he still had Aquo. She lunged with her spear before immediately turning back and spinning over Sasuke so he had to block. She turned in the air and held her hand out as it started to glow black, but her eyes widened when she saw Sasuke holding his hand out too with a very familiar black light. Pyrrha was blast further into the air as Sasuke slammed into the ground and flung across the rest of the stage. Pyrrha landed on the ground but ignored any discomfort as she looked at the raven-haired boy in shock. Sasuke lifted himself off the ground and rubbed the back of his head as he saw Pyrrha look at him in surprise. He knew that she had figured out his ability just like he had realized hers. He looked to the side and saw his blade just a few foot away from him before he looked over and saw what rested beside Pyrrha. He lifted himself up with a grunt and walked over to pick up his sword before turning back to her. Pyrrha was feeling her heart pounding her ears, and her hands started to sweat. Her mouth was going dry, and she was becoming more aware of her surroundings. She looked to the side to see Sasuke's scabbard resting just a few inches from her hand. Yes, she knew very well what this feeling was. Excitement. Pyrrha swung her spear and knocked the sheath up into the air before she spun off the ground and activated the rockets on Milo. She threw her spear at full power while grabbing the sheath and arming it for battle. Sasuke sprinted forward and felt the spear skid off the shield as he kept running towards the redhead. Pyrrha jumped up and fired his shotgun as he used her shield to block the shot. She jumped off of Akuo and into the air to grab her javelin before spinning and hitting it into the shield. Sasuke kicked back and Pyrrha shifted her weapon back into a sword before landing and dashing forward. Sasuke blocked her sword and attacked in return as she let his blade slice on hers. She used her fingers to push the fore-end of the shotgun in her hand before aiming it up and blasting it against the top of her confiscated shield. Sasuke spun around with the shot and flicked her shield back at her with such force that Pyrrha had to lean away as it flew by her head. She felt a pull on the sheath and looked back to see Sasuke had gotten a hold while she was distracted. He pulled it in and tried to get her to let go, but her grip was so tight it was like iron. Sasuke and Pyrrha didn't let go of either side of the sheath as they tried to pull it away from each other. Pyrrha used her semblance to repel the scabbard as fast as possible and leave them with just their swords. Pyrrha gripped Milo tightly and swung as Sasuke fought back with Volman reflection. The two warriors' blades flashed into blurs of silver and sparks as they slashed at each other. The others were starting to lose sight of the swords as the two combatants were only focused on each other. Pyrrha swung high and Sasuke swung low as they missed their blades and traveled past each other. They spun back around and held their blades out at each other's throats and stopped their movement entirely. Sasuke had to spare his aura and deactivated his semblance as Pyrrha was panting lightly. They gripped their blades again. Ring! Sasuke and Pyrrha looked up in surprise at the bell before the lights shined back down on the stage and illuminated everything in sight. Glinda walked back on the stage. I'm sorry, everyone. That is the end of the period. After she had cancelled the match, students stood out of their seats and cheered after the fantastic fight the two fighters had displayed. Pyrrha started catching her breath and looked over at the teacher. We ran out the clock. The platinum blonde nodded in confirmation as Glinda moved some hair out of her eyes. I didn't even know we had a clock. Glinda hummed. Unfortunately, having a last match of the session means that you are limited by the amount of time remaining in the class. Sasuke took a deep breath and looked around before asking, So, who won? Glinda shook her head. We can determine that due to the fact the match ended sooner than expected. You were both evenly matched and your aura bars were near the same amount. I'd have to say that this was a tie by all means. Even so, you two have proven just how skilled you are. Miss Nikos, I expect nothing less of someone as renowned as you. Mr. Uchiha, I greatly underestimated your determination and ability. Sasuke blinked in surprise at the compliment for the stoic teacher before he nodded. Thank you, Professor. Glinda looked up at the surrounding seats before announcing to her class, Everyone, that concludes your classes for the day and the week. I will see you again on Monday. Make sure you all prepare for our classes again. She fixed her glasses before smiling at her students proudly. And congratulations on your first week in Beacon. The students all started moving towards the exits and the amphitheater was empty in moments. Sasuke rubbed the back of his head as he walked over and picked up his sheath and slid his sword back into its place. He then saw Pyrrha's shield resting just a little bit further and went to pick it up as he heard Pyrrha's heels clack behind him. He turned around and saw her approach him and handed Aqua back with an apologetic look. Here, and sorry for taking it from you. Pyrrha gave him a grateful nod as she returned her shield to her back. Thank you, and it's quite alright. In battle you should never expect something to stay constant. This has given me some much needed insight on how to handle situations like this in the midst of fighting. Her meek, humble side appeared again as she looked aside with guilt and apologized. I'm sorry for using your sheath against you. I got caught up in the moment. That's fine. It's at least I can stand after one of the most amazing fights of my life. Pyrrha nodded in agreement. Yes, it was, and you are quite exceptional as well. I have not met many other people our age that could move and fight as well as you. I can't remember the last time I was pressured like that to fight with everything I had. Sasuke nodded before raising an eyebrow. I feel the same, especially when my weapons started flying out of my hands like magic. He noticed Pyrrha flinched and continued with his thoughts. Felt like something was pulling and pushing them right out of my hand, actually more like repelling them. Pyrrha laughed nervously and gripped her elbow shyly. I know this might seem a bit strange, but please, don't tell people about your semblance. Sasuke finished for her before she gave a small nod. He smiled. Your secret's safe with me. It's always good to have a trump card in fights like this. Pyrrha sent him a grateful nod. Thank you so much. Don't mention it. He turned around and headed towards the lockers. We should head out and meet with the others. I agree. Pyrrha followed the raven-haired boy as they went to drop off their weapons and meet with their friends. You don't think they actually did that betting thing again, do you? Oh, I hope not. Hunting. You're both okay? Tenten cheered loudly and wrapped her arms around Sasuke and Pyrrha's shoulders the moment she spotted them walk out. Pyrrha was surprised by her friend's sudden hug and asked with concern, Tenten, what's wrong? Did something happen? Shh! Tenten hushed them while tightening her hug. Just a sec. They both looked between each other before looking up at their other friends for an explanation. What happened? She didn't want to choose between the two of you to see who would win, and she's been panicking about it the whole time you fought, Ruby answered. Yang nodded. We're pretty sure you saved her a mental breakdown. Pyrrha, John said with a worry as he rushed over to his partner's side as Tenten finally let them go. He asked, You're not hurt or anything, are you? Don't worry, John, I'm fine. Pyrrha rubbed her shoulder to get some of the sore feelings out of her arms. Just a little tired from the fight. Oh, John said before a smile came across his face. Well, no surprise there. You were so cool, Pyrrha. Pyrrha looked up at him with some surprise on her face. Really? Are you kidding? It was like I was watching something out of the movies, John said excitedly while thinking about the things he saw his incredible partner do. The way you moved and fought and jumped around. I think I lost track of you a few times during the fight. You were awesome. Pyrrha had a pink hue on her face and meekly lowered her gaze at her partner's words. Thank you for the compliment, John. Nora came bouncing in and jumped in front of Pyrrha happily as Ren followed behind with a small smile. You were amazing. I should have taped the fight with my scroll so I could show you. Pyrrha smiled appreciatively at her teammates' exuberant behavior. Thank you too, Nora. Sasuke felt someone roughly pat his back and looked to see Naruto grinning at his friend. Way to go, buddy. You were awesome. Kiba came up behind him. Holy crap, dude. Where the hell did you learn to fight like that? Kiba was beaming with excitement as he questioned the swordsman. Seriously, you two were incredible. That was the sickest fight I've ever seen. Naruto and Yang's mouth fell and they looked between each other. Naruto spoke. You guys remember we fought earlier, right? Ruby agreed. The way you guys fought was unbelievable. Yang furrowed her eyes. I was fighting as hard as I could. The best fight so far. Yang shook her head. This is so unfair. You! Everyone's attention turned to Weiss as the Harris walked over to Sasuke with something on her mind. She pointed at him sternly. I have something I need to ask you. Sasuke blinked. Okay, what is it? In the 4-star and the initiation test, you ran in a burst of speed and saved me from the alpha wolf before it attacked me. She placed her hands on her hips and scowled. I thought you had the speed semblance, but your movements were far different just now, and I can't get a read of your abilities. Can you make yourself fast or push away from others or what? It's so confusing. The others took some time to think about what Weiss was bringing attention to and wondered the same thing. They all looked toward Sasuke in wonder as he realized they wanted him to show off his semblance. He shrugged. Okay, but neither of those are actually my semblance. This is. His eyes suddenly shifted from black to red in an instant. The others looked in surprise at the sudden, almost simple difference in his look. Ruby rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't dreaming before she pointed out. Hey, that's kind of like what Yang's eyes do when she gets angry. Yeah, Sasuke smiled. But these let me do this. And in a flash, Sasuke disappeared in a rain of purple petals. Everyone except Naruto looked surprised at his sudden disappearance. They looked around before Nora pointed at the other end of the hall. There! They looked over to see Sasuke waving at them from far away before he dashed again and appeared in front of them in a blink of an eye. He smiled as Weiss pointed. That was Ruby's semblance. That's what you used during the test. Sasuke nodded as he deactivated his ability and his eyes changed back to normal. My semblance is mirror. My eyes become hyper-focused and I can see things and movements clearer. They help me see my opponent's every move so I can dodge and fight better. But the best part is that I can mimic other people's semblance. Pyrrha blinked before a small smile came over her face. That explains the change after I disarmed you. John's eyes sparkled. Whoa, Ruby was the same. I know. Tenten looked at her partner. So you copy the other people's skills and you can use them forever? Yang crossed her arms and huffed. Oh, that's just cheating. Sasuke shook his head. No, I can only copy one semblance at a time. It only works if I'm looking at someone. He pointed at Ruby while speaking to Weiss. I copied Ruby's speed in the forest and used it to save you. Weiss blinked in surprise before she suddenly felt someone's eyes land on her. She turned to see Ruby had a smug, confident smile aimed at her and crossed her arms proudly. You're welcome. Weiss rolled her eyes and groaned. If there was one thing she didn't need right now, it was Ruby thinking she saved her butt, even if it was indirectly. Sasuke's eyes fluttered and he rubbed his head. But it really drains me if I keep using it, so I like to spare it. That sounds exhausting. Okay, well, I'm sure some of us are really tired and could use a nap, Naruto said as he started walking down the hall and back to the dorms with a yawn. I'll see you guys later. Hang on, stupid. We got an assignment over the weekend. Kiba followed after his partner. We need to talk about how we make that work. Tena and Sasuke waved to their friends before following after their team. Pyrrha looked over her stuff to see some small bruises and dust over her clothes. I think I want to take a quick shower. I'm feeling a little haggard after the fight. Okay. John looked over at Ruby. We're probably gonna be late for dinner, so you guys should go ahead. We'll see you later. Juniper started heading back to their room as Nora waved back at them. Save your desserts for us. We'll enjoy them when we see you later. Stop rubbing it in, Ruby yelled back with a pout before slumping her shoulders after they disappeared around the corner. She stood back up with a whimper. I don't want to give up my snacks. Get over it, Weiss answered before she started stuttering towards the cafeteria. We lost our bet and now we have to pay for it. As much as I hate losing, we have to keep our integrity. Ruby sulked. I hate losing. Weiss nodded with agreement. Just grit your teeth and bear with it. Ruby and Weiss walked ahead as Yang and Blake followed behind. The bow-wearing slowed down a little to walk beside her partner as she saw the blonde contemplating in deep thought. She inquired, Yang, is something wrong? Huh? Yang perked up as she heard her partner's voice and realized she was daydreaming. She chuckled. Oh yeah, sorry about that, just thinking about something. She tilted her head. What was it about? Nothing much. Just something someone said earlier. Jim replied, trying to avoid incriminating Naruto with any specifics. She thought for a moment before looking to her partner. Hey, how far do you think some people will go to keep a secret? Blake was a little surprised by her usually carefree partner's serious topic and looked forward. She thought for a moment, some people will go as far as they possibly can for their secrets. It's just how they function. But that's just stupid, Yang said indignantly as she threw her hands down and groaned. She hated when people kept keeping bigger and bigger secrets until the system became so complex they can't keep track of it anymore. Yang shook her head. Keeping secrets is just a ticket to people ruining their time with others. Keeping them always results in someone getting hurt because of it. Well, the people that keep those secrets aren't exempt from the pain, Yang. Blake responded before looking down with a thoughtful look. Secrets can hurt just about anyone, but for some people, keeping those secrets feel easier than telling the truth. They don't want to risk their world falling apart without their control. Yang looked at Blake. Do you really think something like that can happen? Blake solemnly nodded at her. I can think of a few examples. Yang blinked in surprise as she looked forward and saw Ruby try to talk with Weiss as the Harris just seemed to put her with the background noise. When she found out the secret about her mother, she remembered that she had put both herself and her baby sister in danger. Just because she wanted to know the truth, she didn't want to be left in the dark anymore. But if she didn't find out about that picture, then their lives never would have been endangered in the first place. It was a double-edged sword. Keeping secrets could put a strain on one life, but discovering some could put your whole world in jeopardy. Was it worth keeping a lie, or was it worth risking the truth? Man, she was too tired to think about this crap. End of chapter 14.